So to jump ahead, I want to actually show you guys this solution. So crossing my fingers that my internet connection here is going to work. So live demos, never know, but I'm going to actually give it a go. And so right before we do that, I want to make sure that you all understand the roles that are being played in this. So we described this sort of end-to-end process, and we know that this should eventually all get up to that sort of department lead and senior executive level. But in regards to the automated portion of our process and in regards to the demo I'm going to be showing you, really there's two roles that we're really going to be focusing on, and that's going to be the staff user and then the supervisor, because all the automation that we did, that we input into the system, that's to improve the staff user input, and that was to reduce the workload on the supervisors. So those are going to be the two roles that I'll be playing in this demonstration for you guys. So first I'll be showing you from the perspective of our staff user, Ted T Tester, and then I'll be demonstrating from the supervisor under my own account. So give me a quick second, because I obviously can't see the screen over there, so I'm gonna.
It's showing.
Well, I got a demo, so I got to make sure.
Oh, you need to sit too?
Yeah, I'm gonna swap.
That helps.
Fast. Give me a quick second.
So as Matt gets us that launch, one of the things that we see with status reports and things like that are people historically spend a lot of time reporting on the status of the projects instead of doing the projects. So I heard chuckles. I know we all do those weekly status reports, and then going up with the management and the executives saying, what did your team do? What did you accomplish? And then the supervisors spend their Thursdays and Fridays reporting up and refining and revising. So the end result of this is really, focused on our end users who are predominantly web developers. They're doing SharePoint, CRM, public website, things like that are aggregating across that organization. And the supervisors that are leading the day-to-day tactical activities, being able to aggregate that up for that executive view.
Yeah.
So rather than spend all my time doing status reporting of my projects, we're trying to pivot to do my projects instead of status reporting.
So I think I got this working. You guys can all see my screen, right? I need some feedback here. Great. So this is our SharePoint environment that we have here. And the way that this is, I'm currently set up as Ted. So I'm signed in right now as Ted. And the idea, if this is like a Monday or a Tuesday, I've come in for the week, and right away I can see, hopefully you guys can see this, let me zoom in a little bit, there's an action item in the list, and it's only one action item. So you guys should be able to see that right here. But this action item is assigned to me. It's my item. I don't see any other items in the list. And as long as I see an item in this sort of staff status list I have here, that means I need to take action against it. So again, going back to that idea, we're trying to keep this as simple as possible for the staff users. If they see something in here, they need to do work against it, right? So as a staff user, really it's simple. I should be able to come in here throughout the week. So not just on any given day, but starting from the beginning of the week all the way through Thursday to Friday, I should be able to come in here and update my item with new accomplishments, new goals, new risks or issues that I've discovered throughout the week, right? And so we pulled this form. We've got a real organized look and feel to this form. Again, that usability aspect, and we're really trying to stress to the end user that we're trying to make it simpler for them, right? So right away, as Ted, I can see that it's for the current week. I can see it's assigned to me. I see my progress with it. And as we scroll through this, I can actually see that we've got these distinguished buckets, right? So we have accomplishments, and further down we've got goals. So I know that there's no sort of mix and matching of my stuff. All my accomplishments go in with my accomplishments, all my goals go in with my goals, my risks with my issues, and so forth. So what's really nice about this is it tries to simplify it, but allow for a number of items. So I'm not just limited to one or two. I can actually come in here and add additional items. So in which case I can just come and add more. I can delete items. So the idea there is if I have a really on week and I have like 10 different accomplishments, I can add all 10 of my accomplishments in there, versus next week maybe it's a little bit slower, I've only got 3 or 4. So the idea is it's really flexible in regards to the input. Again, what you might have noticed when I added this new item, and I'll do this over again for you, it automatically goes and sets my work area based on my previous entry. And again, that was some feedback that we got from the team where they said, I don't want to have to always select the work area every single time. Sometimes I'm going to set in like 10 accomplishments because I was focused in one area, and we want them in as a different line item. So we did that one little change, and that had a huge impression on them, because they're able to then reduce their clicks by 1 times however many accomplishments that they had related to it. So for this, I can put in a sample. Let's do sample SharePoint extranet accomplishment for TED. And again, we notice over here this little checkbox, and that was a feedback that we got from the team. If this was an accomplishment that I achieve every single week because it's just part of my job requirement, I don't want to have to go in there and insert that item every single week. So we added this functionality where they could just check the checkbox, and what that does for them is next week when their items are automatically created for them, their new task item, that item will get added into their form ahead of time. So when they go back to that new form, it's already filled out for them. They don't have to repeat that. So if we go down here, we'll go and we'll add another goal. So I'll do this real quick. I'll change this to be like web goal for TED. And we'll come down here and we'll add a quick risk or issue for the CRM system. And really the idea is, I'm doing this all at one time, but we can do this all throughout the week, right? Ideally, I can save the item. I can always come back to it. As long as it's still in that list, like we see right here, it should be, it needs to be actioned, right? So if I come back in here, and let's assume it's maybe Thursday or Friday, and I know my report's coming up as due. All it is to complete that is I just come here, mark it as complete, I'll save it, and when we get redirected back to the view, there's no more items in the list for me. So for me, as a staff user, I now know I'm done, right? There's no items in the list, I'm done with my work. And the nice thing about that is when I come in on Monday, there'll be a new item for me there. And that item's gonna be waiting for me to address, and I know since it's there, I have to do some work against it. Now, something to note though is that we're describing Happy Path, right? And right now, Happy Path is, I'm there, I'm getting my work done on time, right? That's not always gonna be the case. So let me just jump back over here real quick. Okay, great. So you guys can see that, right? So what this shows is sort of those notification emails that I talked about. So if we weren't on the Happy Path, for the staff user on that Thursday morning, I'd receive an email like we have here on your guys' left-hand side, right? So in which case, I'm being told, hey, you haven't completed your item. It's just a real quick reminder that I have some work to do, right? And then again, if we're following that not-so-happy path, that's our first sort of warning level. Our second warning level is the one that we have on the other side, the right-hand side, right? And that's going to be what Gloria, as the supervisor, receives if I'm, say, as Ted, out sick. So if I've been out sick all week, I haven't got my item, I never received that first email because I'm sick in bed with the flu. Gloria will get that second level warning the morning of, basically saying, hey, all these people have completed their work, that one person hasn't, you need to try to address that or be prepared that their information is not going to be on the report.
And the benefit to that, sorry,
Go ahead.
interrupt. The benefit to that is if Ted has been updating his items throughout the week, which we would hope he would, if Friday he is sick, then I could go in there and look, and I could say completed, and I'd at least get the Monday through Thursday information. And if he had stuff to add on Friday, he could add it to the next week or let me know. But at least I didn't miss the 4 days of his accomplishments.
Yeah, let me just start this real fast. So yeah, Gloria, great point. The idea is we've put all these extra triggers into the process in order to try to help make sure that it gets to completion. At the same time, that's the unhappy path, and even then, the supervisor hasn't really had to step into the process yet, until which point it's reached that second stage of warning. So it really minimized her input or time into the process overall because we've automated the rest of it, right? So let me see if I can pull this back out. So as we have Ted here, so let me minimize this. And I'm going to bring up the view of myself as a supervisor. So as a supervisor, if I was to go to that same list as Ted was working in, I'm not going to see a work item for me because I'm a supervisor. But I have the ability to see a view of all of my team's work. So the idea here, Ted only saw his one entry. Now I'm seeing as a supervisor, I see my entire team of 4 individuals. So I've got Ted, I have David, I've got Sam, I've got Nick. And so all these individuals I can see that they've done their work. If I was to go into each one of their forms, I would see that every single one of those 4 individuals has different accomplishments for different work areas. They have different goals for next week. They have different risks or issues that they've reported on, right? So the idea is, I don't want to have to go to that level and try to decipher all that stuff, because the whole point is I want to aggregate that data together. Well, we've automated that process, like I described, with that final workflow. So if this was Friday afternoon, the workflow would get scheduled and ran. Again, the supervisor has no real input into any of that stuff. Let's see if it actually ran for me while I was doing that. So play a little magic. I'm not sure if you saw it. So if we see here, we actually get that aggregated view. So again, the workflow went and did the work for us. And we can I'll take you line item by line item here, but essentially in this list now, we've got all of our work items for our entire team for the week organized by work area. So if we look at this first item right here, this is our SharePoint intranet work area. If we had accomplishments, we'd see the accomplishments. I can see that the milestones for both Ted and Nick, being the goals for next week, have been combined together. So now I've got a single view where I've pulled that data into one view for them. And coming down to the second item, it's a little bit more obvious, where we've got items for Ted, we've got items for Sam, we've got items for Nick, all combined into a single view, and a goal for David, right? So the idea is, whereas before the supervisor would have to go through and aggregate all the stuff through email, now she just has to come here, basically see all that stuff aggregated for her, and the idea is for the supervisor, the only work left for the supervisor is editing this information, maybe whittling some stuff down, and then publishing it for reporting. So for the supervisor, if I was to come in here as a supervisor, and let's come in here and click the edit button, I can then maybe look at this and I'll say, okay, this accomplishment from Nick about the extranet, it's the exact same one that Sam put in. So I don't really need that twice, because I know that they're working together. So I know my manager is only going to care about hearing about the work, not hearing about it twice. So I can then basically edit that item out. So, and then at the same time, the supervisors can add other things like upcoming events or hot topics or whatever sort of needs for that report. So then once they've done that editing work, really the last step is just publishing this stuff. And so all it really takes is coming through here and just kind of clicking yes for report. So once you've done that for all the items, you just kind of hit stop. And that's pretty much now all the work for the supervisor. So we went and took what used to be ongoing work throughout the week and made it into really a one-step process for them in regards to the workload of the supervisor. So ideally what happens then is that data will roll up to a dashboard. And we'll see if this data is showing up. Give me a quick second while it loads. Try this one more time. So essentially this dashboard is that grid solution that we were talking about. So yep, here we go. Great. So what we can see here is, again, it's a lot of the same look and feel. The difference here is this is the look and feel that the managers are used to. So the idea is for Gloria, she can either go and print this report out. So like we have here is the ability to print the report. Or she can go and she can just send this link off to the managers and say, here's your status report for the week. You're set to go. You can take a look. And then the managers, being familiar with this look and feel, can actually go and do sort of filtering or other things in regards to the report, because they're used to that, right? So let's pull this back up to our slides. So to really wrap things up, hopefully we see through the example that building solutions is really dependent on a number of different factors, right? So we've shown you what we built, but what really is important are these kind of key factors here. So you want to make sure that you're regularly engaging with your team and your stakeholders, right? Which is obviously what we did to be able to get those small changes that we were working on. You want to make sure that when you do that, you've got that sort of feedback loop in place. That way you can provide yourself the flexibility to iterate over your changes that you've collected and be able to prioritize on. And then you want to make sure not to forget the user experience. So making the process you're building easier to use, even in small ways, the way that we did, can really go in a long way into achieving your stakeholder buy-in, which takes us to that next stage. And that's really necessary if you want to call a project a success, right? So you can build the best solutions in the universe, but like I said before, if no one's willing to use them, then it's really a waste of your time. So finally, you really want to aim for that sort of continuous improvement from the very start, right? And this will sort of allow you to really take on smaller, more manageable challenges and then be able to pivot quicker when problems surface. So in our case, for Gloria's team, I showed this as a Monday to Friday solution. We had to eventually pivot where it's a midweek solution, so it goes from midweek to midweek. But because of this continuous improvement, we're able to actually make those changes relatively quickly in their environment and be able to get that stuff rolled out without any sort of downtime for the end users, right? So really, we made sure to really apply these keys in our work with Cover California to make sure that we actually went to a big success. So I think next we're gonna, if you guys have any questions, we're willing to take questions. Feel free, I don't know if they have a microphone or just,
I have a question.
yeah.
Okay.
So, when it in the SharePoint, like task list, you said that there's a task item. Who puts it in? I mean, is that something that just automatically
Yeah.
comes up? Or does the supervisor like go every week and say, you know?
No, it's scheduled. And in fact, if you guys, I'll show you a little bit of the magic behind the scenes. We have this workflow in here that's scheduled to run. It basically runs at the end of the week, and it makes sure that that stuff is there for the next week. So I'll cross my fingers that this is going to function the way I want to. But essentially, it's all done automatically. So we take a list of our staff members. We then go through, look for any of those reoccurring tasks that we had on their previous week's items. We pull those over, we create a new item for them, we inject that stuff into the new item, and then it should just be sitting and waiting for them. So if I was to come here, so assuming this works, and if I was to look at all items here, oh, you guys still on that? Let me pull this off for you guys. So now it is a bunch of magic. So what you see here is we've got our 4 new items for this next week, and that was all done through a workflow. So the workflow went and added that, and as Ted, if I actually come in here and look at Ted's item, we should see some of those that new reoccurring accomplishment on here as well. So this is that Office 365 accomplishment. I had just inserted that on last week's item, marked it as reoccurring. It pulled that data over and inserted it into the new task for me automatically. So that's all done automatic. So again, we're trying to simplify it on all sides. So the only work for the supervisor is really that once a week. I think there's an email notification. If I even check, I can check that if I pull up my email for you guys. Where it's an email notification, and I didn't get it on my account here. But there's an email notification basically telling the supervisor, hey, the item's ready. Here's a link to the list. Go do your editing, do your publishing for reporting. And that's really all the work there is for the staff users.
And the nice thing about that is if you get a new employee, it's based on another list. So you don't have to go to the workflow. You don't know how to go and get in there, right? So it's
Yeah.
just a list item that, I'll go and update, and I know I have a new student working for me. I'll add the student's name and who the supervisor. That way it rolls up to me.
So the idea here is, like Gloria was just saying, she can come here, she can basically add that new user, say that's part of this team. Again, if a user was to switch teams, that's possible to just come in here, update the staff user list, and then essentially the system should handle itself. So it's all been built to basically reduce the workload for on all fronts, right?
Does anyone else have a question? I'll take this to you if you do.
Even easier.
Because I have okay, I didn't want to.
You guys built an amazing system here. It's really impressive. I was just curious as to, does the reports that are generated out of this, what benefits, or do they have a great impact on the customers that you serve?
Well, so maybe that's a question that you can
That's a
answer.
Gloria.
Yes, definitely. So, management always likes paper. They always like to have it in front of them. So we can send them this list. I notice more times than often, we'll be presenting, we'll be in a conference room, we'll talk about it, and, our managers want to have that print out in front of them. So we can save that PDF if they want to have a weekly status instead of going through the dashboard. So it's just a preference on how they like to view the reports. And it's nice for them to have with them. So if they have questions, then they can go drill down, especially when they aggregate their reports to a higher level. They can go down to the item level and look at that, and they can either look at it, online through SharePoint, or they can have it in front of them.
And for at least my understanding of the end-to-end process, again, my focus was automating the input, sort of first steps, but that does go all the way up to the executive level of the organization, where essentially it's aggregation, summarization, but essentially at the very end result, there's like a PowerPoint or some other report or a printed version, something similar to this, where they are taking the information from that low level and they've just summarized it to the point. So we've just taken that first step, simplified it, because that's where the majority of the work is, because the managers, as you go up the chain, it becomes easier and easier, right? There's less to aggregate, so, good question.
I have another question. So, you guys built this within SharePoint. I noticed that, I remember you had 3 different technologies that you mentioned in the beginning. And so I'm wondering, but from what I saw you working within was all SharePoint. So,
Yeah.
these are all functions that are already able to be done within SharePoint without like if I don't have Nintex and custom grid solution, would this be available to be implemented?
So I'll answer that, and you can answer the more technical part. So if you didn't have Nintex, I'm sure you could build a SharePoint workflow. And then also, if you didn't have the custom grid, you would export it probably to Excel, and then you'd work on there. So, we happen to have the custom grid that gives it to a nice PDF, but if you don't, you can do some wonders with Excel.
Yeah, there's a number of different ways, because essentially that the grid solution, again, we went that route because their management already was using it for another solution. So since that was kind of our way to transition to that next stage with the management then taking their stuff and aggregating it and pushing it up, it seemed like an intuitive way to get them to buy in on the solution. But yeah, you could do it through Excel, you could do it through, ultimately the data just lives in a list in SharePoint. So you could just do it with SSRS reporting. There's a bunch of different tools you could do that with. Nintex, like she was saying, we use Nintex because they had already purchased it. It's a rapid development workflow product. With our time frame, it fit. But you could be doing pretty much all this functionality with the SharePoint workflow or a couple SharePoint workflows or K2 or whatever your organization might be using. So it should be possible, yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. We got a couple more minutes.
So now that you've used Nitex,
Nintex.
or Nintex, that thing,
Yeah, yeah.
okay? Would you use it again?
Oh, I love the tool personally. So,
You know, because it's one thing to have to,
yeah.
okay,
No,
inherit it here.
I'm a big advocate of Nintex. I've used it off and on for 6 years now for different.
Because in your presentation, you can't see where that fits.
Yeah, I can show it to you. if we
Okay,
had
you know, you
time.
can't see that piece.
Yeah. No, the best way to describe it, if I try to show you this, is if we come back. What view am I under?
We can see the SharePoint, we can see the custom grid, but we can't really see
If
that
I was to go
part.
and I was to look at my workflow inventory, and we'll do this in the last 2 minutes that we have here. I've kind of got all my different workflows here. Let's look at our notify late user workflow. So where Nintex really shines is it's a visual workflow tool. So in this case, this is pretty much my workflow in visualization form. And even when I go to edit the workflow, it's a drag and drop interface. So in which case, I'll minimize this little chunk of code I got here. But essentially, it's I can come in here, drag new actions into them, modify my actions. This is like a send email notification action. It's real simple to configure, just write in my message, all that kind of stuff. It's a great tool if you're looking to build on top of SharePoint workflows and be able to have a bunch of added functionality. And to me, the big thing is the simplified designer.
So is it, in your opinion,
Yeah.
because I'm assuming you've used them both now,
Yeah.
is it easier to write a workflow using that thing, or is it easier to do it in just using out-of-the-box SharePoint?
It's much easier using Nintex and the Nintex Designer. Here's one big improvement I find is you can import and export these workflows. So if in SharePoint out of the box, if you try to move a workflow from like one location to another location, you can't really do that easily. Here, I could export this to my desktop and import it to your environment over there. It doesn't matter where I put it. It's the idea is as long as you've got the product, we can migrate it really easily. So,
But I also think there's a couple keys. One is also the visual representation of the workflow, because we can sit down with business users and show them that compared to a traditional SharePoint workflow. Gets a little in the weeds, sort of, pseudo-codey. And the forms are pretty. I have to
Yes.
say, the
So that was
forms of
another
the user
thing.
experience.
The form that we showed, that was
Matt can
using
show you that
Nintex.
real quick. Yeah, or the forms have a better user experience than traditional SharePoint out of the box. So, I'll let him launch that.
Agreed with that, yeah.
Yeah, and the form that we have here, this is an in-text form as well. The ability to have that sort of that repeating section, all that kind of stuff comes with an in-text. It's going to be a little bit extra work if you didn't have an in-text, like you asked earlier. But in which case, Nintex makes it a lot simpler to implement that sort of functionality. So,
Even I can build a form.
yeah, so if we were to pull up, I know we're pretty much out of time here, but if we pulled up the form designer, again, it's all browser based. So for this product, give it a second to load. It's a lot of that drag and drop form design type stuff, and it's all within SharePoint. So you don't have to worry about using a separate product, or I mean, even SharePoint, you have to use Designer. You don't have to worry about Designer with this product. So in this case, I can move my form elements around. I can basically configure things, add custom styles, all that kind of stuff. So it's a real great product. So.
Branding?
Branding, that's what this is for. So in this case,
Okay.
yeah, if you want to go deep, I can do custom CSS.
Why-
I
why'd
didn't,
you
I
have
didn't see the
Ryan's
logo.
got that here?
I didn't see the logo.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, we don't have our logo added, but you could definitely add a logo on there. You could do whatever you needed. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Any other questions?
I think we're out of time anyway. So thanks a lot for everyone for coming. I appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of the day.